Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a TV review. We're going to be having a look at the second episode of the new series called The Following, starring Kevin Bacon. Now, I've got mixed feelings about this series. It is only on the second episode at the moment. And I quite liked the first episode after I'd watched it. But before I get into the meat and bones of the second episode, I'll explain a little bit why I've maybe had a bit of a change of heart about the actual first episode, which I kind of liked initially. So after the first episode, I actually gave it a little bit of thought and that what the actual premise was about. And the more I thought about it, the more I sort of picked holes in it and actually thought maybe this is stretching it a little bit too thin. So what do I mean? So the central premise essentially is this master serial killer has escaped from prison and has essentially made a collection of cult followers and acolytes that will do his bidding. So my first real issue is, why did he allow him to get himself captured at the end of the first episode? I mean, I guess this may be answered in future episodes, but I don't really understand the logic of it. Unless he's our main sort of antagonist, you kind of want to know where he's coming from. So he escaped from a high security prison first off, on the way killing a few guards along with another woman. So why get captured again? He's obviously going to go into a higher security prison, and in the first episode it explains that he's allowed these weekly visits to a library where he says he's doing law studying, but what he's actually doing is sending all these messages to other serial killers and organising his forces, which obviously he's not going to be able to do anymore. So why go back to prison? I don't understand why he would let himself do that, especially now he's going to have the actual book thrown at him. And I believe he was actually on death row, so, you know, time's an issue here. So that's the more I thought about it, that kind of bugged me, and I didn't really understand his motivations. And the second thing was, he actually says in the second episode, he's got all of these things that have lined up for Kevin Bacon, who sort of plays the protagonist. And I had the thought, well, he's been going to this library once a week for an hour. How has he managed to do all of this, get all of this stuff lined up, including organising this army of essentially crazy people? I mean, how can you organise people like that? They're very nature, they're not mentally stable. So I don't see how you can successfully organise this type of people. Some of them maybe, some of them are going to be fanatically following you, but there's just too many variants to have a real long-term plan for that, especially given the fact that he was only really being able to sort of organise this stuff once a week for an hour. So that was my second real issue with that. My third one is, the more I thought about it, the Kevin Bacon character is your stereotypical, hard-boiled, grizzled, rogue cop or FBI agent in this case, who's kind of got out the force for under a cloud and has to sort of reluctantly come back, and the upper bosses are going, well, you know, he's a bit of a loose cannon and stuff. And how many times have we seen that before? So the more I thought about these kind of like stereotypical things and plot contrivances, the more I thought, maybe this is just going to be a kind of more of your standard sort of mindless TV series, action sort of cop drama or whatever that you kind of see these days. And I thought the initial premise sounded quite interesting, and I'm not saying it's a bad show. It's not entertaining, because I will still continue watching it, at least for the time being, because it does hold some interest. There are some. It's certainly well acted. I'll give it that. The only other minor gripe I would say is it's explained that Joe Carroll, who is the main bad guy, is obsessed with Edgar Allan Poe, and all his followers are kind of treating Edgar Allan Poe as a kind of religion. And I was a bit like, well, I don't really understand why necessarily they were so obsessed with him. And it just seems a little bit, it's like people getting mad on Alfred Hitchcock and things like that. I didn't really understand why particularly they would follow a writer. There you go. So this actual story is, I don't think much actually happened, to be quite honest with you. The end of the last episode, the nanny that was living with Joe Carroll's ex-wife, Joe Carroll being the bad guy, turns out to be one of his acolytes and kidnaps the son at the end of the episode. So this episode basically it focuses on the attempt to try and find the missing child. And what happens is they track down the whereabouts of this nanny, her real identity and where she came from. And they find out that she lived in a house with her mum, who she murdered as her first victim, along with one of the other sort of guys who ended up being one of the other cult followers. So that's actually quite a good scene. I always say that it's a little bit sort of stereotypical serial killer, if you know what I mean. You know, there's the sort of drawings on the wall and everything like that. It's actually quite creepy and quite macabre, and there's actually quite a good jump scare in it, which I won't give away. So that is my favourite scene in this episode. But other than that, there's not a lot actually happens. There's an attempt at his ex-wife's I forget the actual her name, but Joe Carroll's ex-wife. There's an attempt on her life by one of our other lackeys, but it seemed a little bit half-hearted to me. But other than that, they don't find the child. Obviously, that's going to be going on for a few episodes. So really, this is, I think, just about setting up the rest of the season. So episode 1 was more of an introduction to the characters and sort of, you know, looking at where they are. And then this episode is really sort of saying, here, you know, here's the plan for it. So, and what I got from it was it sounded like we were almost going to have a different follower of the week, certainly in some episodes. So, I'm in two minds about this show. It is enjoyable if you you want that just kind of like actiony, very lowbrow Seven type. If the movie Seven, it's like a lowbrow Seven. We'll see. I mean, it's early days, but I initially liked the first one. This one, it kind of made me think, well, maybe it's going to be more of your sort of generic, forgettable TV show that you maybe watch, and you won't kind of like be too fast, and you'll catch an episode here and there, that kind of stuff. So we'll see. So I'm going to give this one a 5 out of 10. So have you seen this episode? How did you think it compared to the original episode, the pilot? Let me know in the comments, and I look forward to seeing you next time.